Hello, and welcome to the Game Dev Garden, a podcast all about deep conversations, game development curiosities, mental health, and wherever the dialogue might take us. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and I'd like to welcome today's guest. Anya Elvidge is an incredible 2D and 3D artist with an amazing range of experience across fantastic studios and fantastic projects, and is now working at the illustrious Rare. Sorry, slipped up on that. The illustrious Rare. Welcome to the show, Anya.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am ready for deep conversations.
Yes, sounds good to me.
Come on.
So how are you? And are you playing any games at the moment?
I I don't see myself as much as a gamer, but
Hmm.
in these times, games are all we have, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been playing quite a few games, mostly, which is kind of awful, Skyrim. I just play Skyrim all the time. Uh, it's
Yeah.
like the best. It's like comfort food in game
Mhm.
form.
Oh, it totally is. Like the soundtrack to this day still makes me feel like so thrown back to my youth as like a game developer and playing like big open worlds for the first time.
Yeah,
And it's
totally.
interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned the difference that the pandemic has had on how we play games and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've just I've never like I say, not been much of a gamer, but
Mhm.
obviously I play games because that's what I work in, but I games like Skyrim, for some reason, it's just something I've come back into, and another one as well is, Sea of Thieves, which I guess is
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of on point with working at Rare. I'd never played Sea of Thieves when I joined Rare, and since I've joined, all I've really wanted to do to spend time mostly with my brother and my boyfriend is just play Sea of Thieves all the time, and my brother lives all the way up in York and I'm in West Sussex, so it's the only way that we can really spend time together. So
Yeah,
yeah, it has definitely affected, how we interact, but yeah,
for
games
sure.
have been great.
Oh, for sure. I totally relate to that. The idea that you still want to spend time with the people and, you want to do something with the people that mean a lot to you as well. Lewis, who was on the show last month, him and I were playing Sea of Thieves as well, just to sort of, chit chat and just do something and get ourselves involved and, to maintain and enjoy our relationship, our friendship.
Yeah, it's great, like, so much silly stuff happens as well.
Oh,
It
for sure.
brings genuine joy into
I
life.
know, I know, and it's so baked into the game's design, which is just amazing to see.
Yeah, it's very fun. So, yeah, mostly Sea of Thieves and Skyrim, which kind of feels bad. Like, if there's even in the pandemic, so many amazing games have been released, and
Oh
I'm
my
still
god, yeah.
playing Skyrim.
It's so difficult, as a creative, as like a game creator as well, to because you feel this pressure to be playing specific things, being
Mm.
contemporary, and sometimes I don't want to play something contemporary. Sometimes I just want to sit back and play Hotline Miami for the hundredth time or something. You know,
Yeah, the
um,
pressure's real.
Totally, totally. But that moves us quite nicely onto our first question. So, Anya, you've had an incredible range of studios and a wealth of experience, and it's sure is probably been a crazy journey. I'm not sure exactly where I would start, but could you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a game artist?
Yeah, God, well, I guess it's the classic. I enjoyed art and computer
Mhm.
games as a child. Like the big
Yeah,
games that I would play was things like Halo. I was well into Halo, and
gosh,
I always
same.
it's so good. And I always loved the things like the skyboxes and the art in games like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So um, I did art at school, and it was basically my favorite subject. But I didn't really know that you could do it as a career until I think I just happened to run into a course online. So it was De Montfort University Game Art Design is what I ended up studying.
Um, okay.
So that was a 3-year degree, and
Mm,
they just like teach you the basics of game art. Like this is a 3D software package, and this is a polygon because
mm,
I went in with 0 understanding of any of that
mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I did that for 3 years and graduated in, 2016, and then I I guess I kind of specialized mostly in environment art and
Mhm,
stylized environment art at that. And so I ended up going to creative assembly. They took me on as an intern, so I did like the
mhm,
traineeship thing, which is it's like
mhm.
quite a well-known thing that they do. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, that's like where my sort of time in the industry really started back in
Mhm,
2016.
mhm. Wow, that's awesome. So it's interesting that you mentioned your fine art background from high school, because I actually think that is quite common, not just in game artists, but in games industry people. A lot of games industry people have some kind of fine art training. You know, I know level designers who used to draw a lot in school, and those skills actually play a role in their level design roles and their experience. It's really helpful to have. That kind of early training as a creative.
Totally. Yeah, I don't think I would be where I was without some sort of traditional
Mhm.
training. And you see a lot of like job applications as well that say you need to be able to
Yeah.
draw with a pencil as well as with a
Mhm.
stylus.
Sure. No, I could not agree more. It's enormously beneficial for me, but just like the fine art background, and I know it's true for many other games professionals. And I also know lots of people from De Montfort as well have done fantastically in the industry. They really have a really special way of training their graduates to sort of fit like particular niches in the games industry.
Yeah, there is a lot of us. I don't know why or how that happened, but there's so many people from De Montfort. They're
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know what the course is like now. It's been a while, but they'd kind of train a lot of people to be more realistic artists,
Mhm.
but they were always very open to you kind of deviating away from that. And so for me, in 3rd year, I ended up really focusing on sort of concept art and,
Yeah.
like 3D environment art,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
from the 1st year, you just start off as, like, use 3ds Max and Photoshop
Mhm.
and photographs to texture a bin, like, is where it
Yeah.
starts for everyone.
Yeah, of course. You know, I know so many courses that start like that. I know courses at my university did just that, and they also allow for that specialization later down the line in terms of like character or stylized. You know, there's that variety for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it's essential to get, like, a good
yeah,
range of artists out of your course to let people
totally,
do what they want.
totally. Totally. And then the last thing you mentioned was the traineeship at Creative Assembly. So that is a well-known. Everybody knows about the Creative Assembly traineeship. It's one of those really fantastic opportunities in games. I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about your experience on the traineeship, because it's something that I've always been curious about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that was awesome. It was a really good experience. I ended up going there because one of my lecturers, well, I think they came in as a guest lecturer and they sort of said that we could show them our portfolios. So we ended up talking, and he ended up referring me for it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of perfect, really, because I just happened to join as development was happening or beginning on Total War Warhammer 2.
Mhm.
Um, and I got put onto the campaign map team. Uh, I had never played Warhammer or Total War. And
Oh
so I was
gosh.
just like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" I'd, like, seen the trailers, obviously, like, I had some understanding of what was going on. Um,
Yeah.
but, like, in some ways that was good because it's, like, a fresh perspective, but
Totally.
I was
I
pretty.
absolutely agree with the fresh perspective on things. It's often underrated.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with applying for something that you don't really have experience in my opinion,
Mm,
because I think
I agree.
yeah, it's good to broaden your horizons. But yeah, that was a great experience. It was for a year, and I worked on Total War Warhammer 2, doing lots of stylized kind of top-down environment assets.
Mhm.
And you basically get treated as a full-time employee. You just have that extra support network. So you kind of get thrown in the deep end, but you've always got
Mhm.
that safety net, which I think is perfect.
That is kind of, the best of both in that situation. You also mentioned the personal relationship that sort of helps you sort of make that opportunity work for you.
Mm.
And I know from my own experience and from some of my mentors' experiences that a lot of their first opportunities came about just the same way, which is super interesting.
Yeah, I think it's always crazy to me when people know. I feel like there's a lot of opportunities to meet people in the games industry as
Mm-hmm.
in a mentorship capacity, and you have to just grab that bull by the horns when it does come your way, and I guess there's a line you have to tread. You don't wanna be annoying someone,
Yeah.
but people are generally really happy to help, and if they see someone that is genuinely talented or actually is just working really hard, then you're the first port of call when a job comes up, and they'll you can offer someone that potential opportunity.
Yeah, that couldn't be more true. I've experienced that personally in my journey, and for me as well. When I'm looking for roles and stuff, when our companies I worked for have been hiring, I'm always sort of thinking, oh, who have I got in my immediate circle of acquaintances and people that would be just right for this role, and it worked out great for you, and it's also worked out for so many other game developers, and it's tried and tested advice, really.
Yeah, I don't think people should be too afraid to approach people. Even if it's in
Absolutely.
an informal capacity on something like Twitter or whatever. I'm always
Mhm.
pleasantly surprised when people get in touch, and as long as you're not a jerk about it, I don't
Yeah.
think there's anything wrong with contacting people and chatting.
Mhm. I completely agree. As creators, we love talking about our work and our experience, and I've also heard, like you mentioned, some of the more questionable messages that people get from games, because they definitely do happen.
Yeah.
But as long as you're respectful and you are conscious that someone is giving you their time and attention, it can be really beneficial for both people.
Yeah, as long as you don't show up and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna insult you now, but also I wanna be your friend," then I think you're good.
I know.
People are generally
Exactly.
very nice though, and yeah, it's I guess it's difficult, like, when you're first starting out knowing where to go, and it would be nice if there was some sort of way that people can find potential mentors without being on social media. It's a shame, really.
Yeah, I think there's things like BAFTA Crew and Skillshare is it Skillshare? I forget the name of the program, but there's a couple of them, but they're not like there's not like the place to go for
Mm.
mentorship. It doesn't exist. It's quite fractured still.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah. So moving on to our next question. So how did you manage the balance of both doing 3D artwork as well as 2D artwork? Because this is it's relatively unusual, but looking at your work, you've made a huge impact in both. And I just wondered if you'd talk a little bit about how you balance those two things.
I almost don't see it as a balance and more of just me taking the things that I enjoy and just doing them. Um,
Hmm.
it was a big thing at, like, university. I guess in some ways a good thing and in some ways a bad thing, where you get kind of told that you need to specialize, and
Yeah.
for me, I struggled quite a lot with that. I definitely think there's people out there that shouldn't have to specialize, like, if you don't want to. So
Hmm.
I really struggled with the idea of specializing, and I kind of did in some ways because I had to. So I did the 3D environment art stuff, but just kept drawing on the side because I enjoy
Hmm.
it. Um, and so in the end, sort of over the course of years rather than days or weeks or months, but
Hmm.
um, it started becoming more of a thing that I did, and so now I kind of have equal amounts 3D and 2D, if not more 2D actually, that I do
Yeah.
professionally.
That is so cool. And I think one of the really interesting things that you mentioned is how that specialization isn't actually right for everyone. And this is something I really struggled with when I was a student as well, because that you're always being told specialize, specialize, specialize. And
Mm,
I remember speaking to an animator from Valve, and I was like, look, I really enjoy programming and design and prototyping and level design and all these different areas. And what she told me was about the T model, which is something that Valve believe in quite heavily, and it's the idea that you should have one or two really specialist skills, but you should also have a moderate level of skill in a few different areas.
yeah.
And it sounds like in your experience, you sort of managed to make your team model um, both in environment art, but also in concept art and in 2D stuff, which is, is awesome, because I would rather that people found their own path than just followed advice to the letter.
Totally. I've not actually heard that way of putting it before, so that's quite interesting. But I 100% agree that I guess in some ways, places like universities, they have to
Mhm.
simplify things down a certain amount. So
Oh yeah.
they can't try and teach you everything and try and get you good at everything. So they will, of course, say for the simple like sake of simplicity to specialize, which is
Mhm.
understandable. Uh,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I think you have to after university, you just have to do what you like and enjoy it. And if that is that you enjoy animating and doing programming or whatever, there is
Mhm.
always a way to bring those two together.
I couldn't. Yeah, that sounds so much more like bespoke advice than than you get from some universities sometimes, because they have to teach such a broad range of students, and for most students, the correct decision is to specialize in something. But
Mm,
there are always people who don't benefit from that. I've had friends who actually studied animation in their degree, and like you said, ironically, have gone on to be lead programmers.
that's very
Excuse
cool.
me. But yeah, it's totally nuts. And I think universities sometimes need to focus down on when students do need that, like, bespoke advice, rather than you know the advice that they give the students year after year.
Yeah, there are some like universities that try and do mentorships and things like
Mm,
that. But it's odd. I've found that when a university puts a student in contact with with like an industry contact, quite
mhm.
often just nothing comes of it. It's almost like that putting two people together just it doesn't necessarily work. So
Yeah,
they
yeah,
they want people to have that bespoke advice, but it's not just a case of plonking a student and a professional in a room together and
yeah,
making it
yeah.
happen. So
No, it's exactly. It's just it's not. It lacks that organic quality, doesn't it? That you build naturally with people. I've been mentoring a uni student for a little bit now as well, and it didn't really emerge by, I am going to be your mentor now. There was never a point where that happened. It's just naturally evolved into that through a friendship.
yeah, that's the best way it happens, and it's
Oh yeah,
difficult to make it happen, but when it does, it's great, and I
it
think
is.
I
It
wish there was
is.
some way that could happen.
So do I. I completely second that. So moving on to our next question. Why did you pursue game art over other artistic options?
Well, my mum didn't want me to become a museum curator, which was the big one if I'd gone on to do, fine art.
Yeah,
Um 'Cause, I don't really know if there's that many museum curator jobs out there, but,
yeah,
I've I really like painting and I
mm,
really like drawing and all of that, but it's difficult when you're a student to look at that stuff and go, "Yeah, I'm gonna become a professional painter for my career."
yeah, yeah,
Again, it's almost a thing that does happen organically
mm,
around life, and so you might start out as a I don't know, anything really. Like, you could start out in IT or in my case
mm,
games, and then you kind of deviate into something like professional oil painting or whatever. But
mm,
for me, it was that I've said before, I like games and I like art, and
mm,
this is the perfect amalgamation. I didn't expect how much I would enjoy it.
mm,
To be honest, like, I think it was always like a means to an end to go on and pursue art in other forms.
yeah,
Um, it's just kind of, doing it for games is like a career potentially more so than
mm,
maybe fine art is. Um, so yeah, I guess it was kind of a logical choice more than anything, and
yeah,
it just ended up being the best choice I could have made.
yeah. No, totally. I totally understand that. Not everyone sort of clicks their fingers and says, I'm gonna work in design or level design." For me, it was always the idea that I would 100% one day work on video games. But not everybody's route to games is a straight path.
Mm,
There's there's often, meandering, and people do different things for a while and find games later down the line, much like other professional fields as well.
Yeah, games was definitely I think I discovered it literally when I was looking at,
Yeah.
UCAS, sort of applications for
Mhm.
university, and it turned out that this thing called game art existed, and yeah, it was just a great decision, and, but yeah, like you say, a very direct one, like a very direct
Yeah,
way into the industry, if ever there was one.
definitely.
Um, Most people who are sort of true industry vets kind of did other stuff first because it
Mm.
wasn't really a direct career back then.
Yeah, I yes, my sort of path was almost like very similar to yours. I walked into a college open day, and they said there's a course where you can make 3D models and use Unity, and you can also do life drawing. And I went, that's a real thing that I can do every single day.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, it's but the industry, sort of the industry vets, always have such great stories as well. We had I worked with a guy who used to animate like really old school cartoons for the BBC, like Pink Panther style stuff. And those stories are equally just as valid as people that took a direct route as well.
Yeah, I feel like my story kind of lacks soul in some ways, like I've been on some sort of game developer churn out pipeline.
I mean, I wouldn't be so hard on yourself. It's just kind of it's a different, the path into games is always changing, and naturally, it's not the same as it was when our seniors entered the industry as well. But yes, let's move on to our next question, which would be, what skill do you think is really important to game artists that you wouldn't actually expect is?
So something that I don't know if I would call it a skill. Well, I guess it's kind of a skill. It's like for me, as someone who is quite stressy and
Mm,
will glue myself to a computer 24 hours a day if I
mm,
need to do that to reach my goals. The skill that personally I've learned is the ability to just step away from my computer and actually experience the wider world. Which I guess kind of sounds weird, but it is in some ways, I would argue, a skill because
yeah.
I was very bad at that when I was in sort of my first years at university. And
Mm.
now maybe I've just become lazy, but now I can walk away from my computer for days and it's great. But that ability that I've kind of seeded it in myself from I
Yeah.
had a year out of working and I went away and sort of went to some different countries and took my camera and just experienced the world. And in doing that, you amalgamate different cultures, you know, even little things like a certain color that you just haven't seen in a certain setting. Like, this is a very
Mhm.
artsy-fartsy kind of thing to say, but, like a certain shade of pink next to this shade of green that you're not gonna see if you're just sat at a computer,
Yeah.
and going out and being able to be at peace with the fact that you are not working is, I think, quite a good skill to learn.
I love that. That's so nice.
It's so airy-fairy.
No, I really appreciate that, because there's always this pressure that you should either be making games all the time or you should be playing them. And as someone who basically, I love conversations. Like I can sit and have a conversation with my mates, all night, and I'll talk their ear off over dinner. And it's important to find those things that aren't computers or games, because it influences your work, and it helps you as a creative. And also, not everything is about video games and screens.
Yeah,
So
exactly. I have a genuine problem where I can't like, if I go to an industry event, I can talk forever about,
Mhm.
art, games, whatever, but I am literally useless at talking to people about actual things. I don't even know what these things are because I just, like,
Yeah,
won't go outside enough. I mean, recently, no one goes outside, so it's kind of fine, but
yeah,
I don't know if it's a bit of, like, anxiety or what, but I do really struggle with speaking about things that aren't industry things, and I think it's so important to try and broaden yourself a little bit. So I'm trying.
Yeah, no. I feel that way as well because we're people who work in games are so passionate about their craft and video games at large. Sometimes it is all encompassing. All your friends working for a period of time in my life. All my friends worked in games, and all that we would talk about was games industry, games jobs,
Yeah,
and there are other things to talk about. There's relationships, the news, weather. you know,
weather's
um,
nice. Yeah,
weather's nice. It
no,
rains sometimes, it snows even. But yeah, I really appreciate that, and I think it's something that we can all be more mindful of. Cool. So moving on to sort of our last section of the show, Anya, would you be comfortable talking a little bit about your mental health on the show today?
yes, I'm an anxious wreck all of the time. Let's talk about it.
Excellent. I mean, not excellent, but I'm glad you're comfortable having a chat on the show about
Yeah,
the
it's
mental health.
cool.
What tactics do you have for dealing with your mental health when you're having a particularly difficult day?
Aside from crying and screaming into pillows and I clean the house. I clean the
Mhm.
house a lot. Well, I talked a little bit about how I've sort of learned to step away from the computer a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of my anxiety and stress came from, like you say, that need to do development stuff or play games that other people have developed.
Yeah.
Um, and in sort of parcel with learning to step away, I've just learned to just not well, try not to worry about stuff. There'll always be days where you're really stressing about the fact that you're not doing work, but um maybe it's partially from the fact that I sort of work, 9 till 5
Mhm.
now, and I've accepted that that is enough. Um, but I just don't feel the need to do personal work and stuff at the moment, and I have just learned to relax a bit more, which is really nice, especially with COVID and always being
Mhm.
inside.
Oh no, for sure. I know a lot of people who feel when they say, "Oh, I've just been doing my day job and I've been relaxing and spending time with my friends and stuff, and I've not been doing a personal project." I know people sometimes say that with a little bit of guilt, and it should absolutely never be that way. Doing your day job is a full time job. It takes it out of you, and using your spare time to recover, that's totally fine. And so is doing a personal project. That's fine as well. You've just got to do what makes yourself comfortable and happy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think the thing is that these things come in flux. You don't
Mm,
always need to be doing personal work, but you don't also always have to be socializing or any other
mm,
myriad of things. For me, I probably have a period of about 6 months where I'll be quite productive, and then another 6 months where I'll be quite sort of lackluster and uninterested, and I might feel a bit guilty during that time. But at the end of the day, if you're doing even a month of work outside of your day job, that is a lot of work.
yeah,
You don't have to do that.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, there's always that pressure, but for me, yeah, I've just kind of learned that even if I'm in the middle of a big personal project, I'll reach a point where I'm just like, I hate this so much,
yeah,
and I'll just step away for 2 months and come back to it another day if I want to.
yeah. It's so refreshing that you're able to take a step back and sort of leave a project that way. I feel similarly because it's interesting that you mentioned sort of like a 6 months doing productive stuff and then like a 6 month period where you sort of recharging because I went through the exact same thing about a year ago or two. I
Mm.
was trying to do a game a month where I was like releasing a game like a finished playable game every month, which was just
What?
absolutely insane. And I did
Amazing.
it for I think I got four months in, and I did basically one game in 2 months, and then I did a game jam in that 2 months. So it was like effectively one finished game every month, and I got about 6 months in, and I was like, I need to take a break.
Oh my
This
goodness.
is
Oh,
way
that's
too much,
great.
way too much. And that was kind of my first personal experience with burnout, and
Mm.
I was really, really feeling it in the day job. I was really like, I am exhausted, and fortunately, I was able to feel that creeping in, and I had to just say, look, this is bad for my mental health. I need to take a step back from this, and fortunately, I did, and I managed to feel normal again in my day job, and it's tough, and sometimes you can't be making games 24/7, and it's ridiculous that we ever think that you can do that, but yeah, it's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, I've been coming up out of well, trying to come up out of some pretty hardcore burnout,
Yeah.
from last year 'cause, I had a period where I was working a full-time job and then also doing, like, 2 to 3 days of freelance,
Mhm.
which doesn't make sense because it's a 7-day work week, and I was doing, like, 8 days of work, in a week, and I did it for a few months and absolutely just, like, killed myself, and
Mhm, mhm,
so I had to take a good step back and reevaluate what I was doing, and
mhm.
I've now rearranged my work so that it's less insane. But the
Yeah.
burnout was awful. And I've burned out before, but this was really bad.
Gosh, I'm that's so tough, and I'm glad you were able to take the time you needed to recover from that. I did a similar thing where I was doing some freelance work. It was like a design document, bit of freelance work, and I was keen to do it. I wanted to do that
Mhm.
work, but as well as a full time job, writing a design document in your evenings when you're supposed to be recharging or spending time with your friends and family, it was very difficult. But it's a challenge when you're so passionate and when you want to do work like you experience.
Absolutely.
You obviously really wanted to do those projects, and you know it's tough. It's such a tough balance.
Yeah, it's like a weird sort of concoction of mental chemicals that like need for rest, but that just undying need to create or to
Yeah.
contribute to something. It's extremely detrimental and difficult to deal with, and I think that's probably one of the big things that it is difficult to deal with in the games industry and other industries of course as well. But it's just so like that need to make things, but also dealing with your actual physical and mental health is so difficult.
Hmm. Wow, I could not have said that better myself. Oh, thank you for being so candid and having such a nice conversation about mental health with me.
That's cool. I mean, burnout is I think the biggest thing that I've personally been dealing with recently, in addition to just being I'm a very stressy person, and I've always kind of laughed it off. And it's in the last couple of years where it's been like, actually, maybe I should do something about this and actually sort of put actual energy into calming down, you know, taking time out, whatever. So yeah, I mean, it was a couple of years ago. I took a year out because I just was done. And that year was, doing nothing, a great deal of it, and tiny bit of freelance. But I'm much more at peace now with sort of my own mental instabilities that are
Yeah,
just there and they just have to be dealt with.
yeah. I think I think people forget that taking time away from games is a perfectly valid option as well. Um, it's an intense job. It's an intense lifestyle. And I'm glad you were able to take the time and to that you needed to recharge, and it, it's tough. It's so tough, and
Yeah.
it's a brilliant lifestyle, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. But everyone has the days when they think maybe I need to step away from this.
I feel like there's gonna be a lot of people ready for a break after COVID's kind of chilled out, whenever that may be. Like, people will just be so ready for that holiday somewhere. I'm ready for a holiday.
Everyone's going to be like buying those like fancy camper vans that they can live in, and driving all over
Oh my goodness, don't
Asia.
get me started on camper vans. I've literally been looking at them. I want one so much.
I mean, I've also had similar thoughts where I've been like, like, what if I just spent my savings on like a canal boat and I live on a canal boat and I make video games
For
and
real.
chill out and talk to people?
Yeah, I spend like I'd say a good portion of my life sitting on the internet looking at. I have looked at canal boats. There's vans. I'm like, I swing every day from being like, I should buy a van and do it from scratch to I should just buy a ready-made van and live in it on my mum's driveway. And then in the next breath, I'll be like, maybe I should buy a barn and renovate it with that money that I don't have. I just want to do
Mm,
something physical. I don't know.
I know. It's that COVID stuff is like the whole COVID situation is. It's sort of reminded so many people that being outside and it is so important, and doing stuff practically with your hands is also like really fulfilling. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I've never 'cause I live so far away from my family, like, I'm a good sort of 5 or 6-hour drive away, and
Mhm.
having them there and accessible has always just kind of taken away that loneliness that you feel being away from family, but now that I can't go and see them, and I haven't seen them for almost a year, it's just
Yeah.
I'm like, "Ah," it's like not having the option there, I'm like, "Ah, I can't see my
I know.
family." It's very, very
Yeah.
isolating.
Yeah. No, I miss my little brother so much. We play Minecraft Dungeons together and stuff, and not even being having the option to go is just it's a whole different world.
Yeah, it's
Um, Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I was just thinking about this one time that I was stuck in traffic, and, it's like this feeling so, like, I love driving, and driving along is great, and I remember I pulled once onto the motorway and immediately hit this wall of traffic, like, on the slip road. It was
Mm,
just dead stop, and I don't care about getting stuck in traffic on the motorway. I drive the M25 on a regular basis, which is basically just, like, the wheels of hell. Uh, and so it was fine, but the problem here was, and this is totally tangential, but also kind of similar, was I
mm,
was on the slip road and I could see all the traffic on the roundabout behind me flowing, and I knew that I could, like, walk to that roundabout, and I just started freaking out because I could see that the option was there, and I
yeah.
couldn't have it. I was, like, freaking out, and, it's like that with my family. I'm just like, "Ah, I can't do anything," but they're there, like, within reach.
Yeah. It's funny how the human mind like does that sort of thing to you, isn't it? Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Anya. This has been really, really nice, and I've learned so much about game art and about and my perspective on mental health is so much richer now. Would you like to plug your Twitter or anything before we close the show?
Well, I'm on Twitter, Anya_the_artist, uh and feel free to contact me with your traffic motorway panic stories. I'm very happy to talk to people if they want like advice about stuff. I'm quite bad at getting back to messages promptly, but if people want to talk, I'm there. Um, yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been really, really lovely.
You're more than welcome. And if you do have anything that you want to talk about traffic, please send it all to Anya, not me. Um,
Wait,
all the best. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me here at the Game Dev Garden, a podcast all about deep conversations, mental health, game development, curiosities, and wherever the dialogue might take us. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you all next time.